Okay, so hi everyone. I'm here with one of my favorite people in the world, Narelle Macnamara. Thank you for being here, Narelle. And it's great to have a chat. I know we're going to be talking about my trip to Australia in January, which I'm looking forward to. I'm always looking forward to going to Australia when it happens. But also, I wanted to have a chat with you about uh, being a teacher and the things that involves. I mean, you and I have been teaching for many years. When did you start?
Well, first of all, before we start that, I just want to say how much we're all looking forward to seeing you in January. Where all my students are very excited, as I am, as we always have so much fun when we get together. But I'm really looking forward to it, and there's a lot of anticipation and for you coming, so that's great. But getting back to teaching, yeah, I started teaching just over 20 years ago, and I kind of nearly fell into studying astrology and fell into teaching because, in a sense, that I was actually trying to get into a course of holistic counselling in a natural therapies college. And I couldn't get the lecturer I wanted. I kept trying. I was determined to get this lecturer, and I could. And he kept booking out too quickly. And so in the end, my daughter said to me, "Look, there's this great astrology course they do here. Why don't you have a look at that?" Went there, did level one, and like the first day I sat in the classroom, I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting for." So yeah, so I studied with Parampara, who was teacher there at the time, and sadly, years later, a lot of years later, she got lung cancer, and so she rang me one day and said to me, "Look, I want to talk to you about who I should get to take over the classes at Nature Care and the college I was at until I get better." And I said, "Well, who are you thinking?" And she said, "Well, I was actually thinking about you." I went, "Oh my gosh, I'm not a teacher, you know." And she said, "Well, with that crowded ninth house, I actually begged to differ. So I kind of felt like it was, I couldn't say no to her. She was sick. And then sadly she passed away, and the college said, "Well, we'd like you to keep teaching." And I actually started to teach, and Kelly Surtees as well was, I was teaching the first level, and Kelly was teaching the second level there. So, and then Kelly went on her way in different direction, and I stayed at the college. So I was teaching there for many years, maybe 18 years, and it wasn't until COVID that I stopped. But I was doing classes outside of the college as well. So I nearly felt like my path was being, I was pushed into the path, which was really my passion and something that I absolutely love.
Wow. And one of our favorite people is Brian Clark. And we should have
Yeah.
had him on as well, because then we could have had a really good Gemini rising between all of us. But when did he come in? While you were studying with
Yeah.
Brian Clark?
Well, Brian, as you know, has been a huge mentor and for me, and we work, do retreats together and workshops together as well. But Brian's been a huge influence on my life and really taken my astrology to the next level. We met many years ago at one of the conferences, and he mentioned that he did these trips to Greece, mythological trips to Greece with dream work and everything. And so I said, that sounded wonderful. So a friend of mine, who Melinda, and myself went on one of his trips, and we were, quite taken with the whole experience and love mythology. And so I fell in love with mythology as well. And so yeah, so Brian's been huge in my astrological journey and in my life as a dear friend.
Mm. Yeah, he's a
But
special
that was,
guy.
if you're going to ask me how many years ago, I'm going to, I think it was one of the Melbourne conferences, so it's quite a while ago. Um, yeah, many years
Right.
ago.
Right. And it sounds like you really enjoy the beginners. Is that where you tend to stay with them and rather than, or did it just end up being more advanced simply because they stay with you?
I think it was that, I loved level one because I think you kind of relive the astrology when we started each term, we'd start again, and everyone was so enthusiastic, like they're all kind of so excited about it. But then the college wanted me to continue doing all levels, and a couple of us put together Kira Sutherland being another one, and Jeff Marks. We put together the certificate course at the college, and but then I ended up sort of teaching it, and Kira would do the lunation cycle and a bit of medical and that sort of thing, which was all part of the certificate course. So yeah, so and I did love it, but then the students were wanting me to take them on to the next level. And then finally they'd got done the 12-month course and I sort of said to them, well, this is it. And they went, no, that's not it. We've got to do something else. And I went, well, no, that's it. And but anyway, one of the girls was very persistent. We ended up doing a group outside of the class once they finished the first year. And believe it or not, that class is still going. So, and I've probably got, I think I'd probably have about 3/4 of the students that started with that group about 15, maybe not even 17 years ago, that we still meet once a month. And I've got other classes that meet once a month as well that have carried on from there. But we've got a core group of these girls, which we call our soul group, and we meet up each month. And so, yeah, and I it's been just, I think it's more of a therapy group for all of us than anything else. But we do use a lot of astrology. I use a lot of experiential astrology. I do circle work. But the soul-centered astrology is really speaks to me. Using very Piscean, use lots of imagery and experiential work. So yeah, that's where I'm at with teaching, which is why I think I love your teaching as well, because it brings something so totally different to me. And as you know, our moons are opposite, I think nearly to the degree.
They are, yes.
Um,
I have a lot of 2-degree mutable moons in my life, or people with that. So that's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I
That's
think with it, mine being the 3 degrees in Pisces and yours the 2 degree in Virgo, which is that complete opposite. And I think, I've learned a lot from your teaching. I remember the first class I went to of yours at one of the conferences. I think again it was in Melbourne when Brian did, and I just remember thinking, oh my God, he's so organized, and he had all these notes, and I learned so much. And walked out thinking, this is great. It was so totally different, which is why I love my students learning from you, because they're getting a totally different experience with you than they do with me.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
thank you. I mean, it would be a one-off, it's sort of like a weekend and then I'm off and they've got you to pick up the pieces, I guess, as well.
They
But
might try and talk you to coming back.
I remember that conference. I think it was 2012, my first visit to Australia, and somebody dropped out, and Brian said to me, "Will you do a talk tomorrow on something or other? I think it was the 10th house, or no, I forget what it was, but he said maybe the sixth house." And I thought, well, I'm not somebody that back then, I could probably do it now, but back then I wasn't somebody that could easily sit there and arrange a talk in a way that would be happy. I'd be happy doing it and that would feel like I'd organized it well enough. But
Yeah.
nowadays, people say to you, can you have a talk, chat about this? Or students ask you to focus on something. It's easier to do. But back then I remember being terrified. And that conference was the first one where there was a lady there from Tasmania who's no longer with us. She died a few years ago. And it was very hot, coming to Australia in January. It was over 100
Like
degrees.
40 degrees. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
I just said, "Oh, I'm really hot in here." She said, "Why didn't you take your clothes off then?" She shouted out in front of everybody. And I thought, how old was I? I guess 30 something. I thought, oh, I could just die from embarrassment here. Or, and I said to her, well, I can start with my trousers and then you'll really be sorry. And that's the only thing I could think of to say. And she loved that. That was fine. Nowadays I'd probably be cancelled for even mentioning trousers. But
Wow.
it was a great one. But the as you know, the great thing, there are students always who have done a bit of reading of astrology and then they want to go into year two straight away.
Yeah.
Or they say, well, I know the basics, and they've done some, excellence university type of thing, that's been very, very superficial. And they
Mm,
think they can go straight into the second year. And at the LSA, we're very happy for them to do that. But I'll often say to them, look, it's your time and it's your money. But starting at the beginning, you just learn so much more. And I always say, if
yeah.
I could go back in and sit there and learn myself, I'd do it every year because you
Mm,
never stop learning the
yeah.
fundamentals. Do
Yeah.
you find that as well?
Absolutely. And that's why I think I love teaching the level one, because you kind of sometimes you can get so um teased out and you're getting in all these other things coming in, you forget about the kind of like the core essence of things. And I think bringing it back to that basic stuff is really great. And I just think, and I just love the enthusiasm when they come in and do it. I think I've only ever once allowed one person to start sort of like later in the level two, because I just sort of said to them, look, if even if you have learned from someone else, I'm going to do it a different way. Like, and I even have, I do have a great book that Parampara wrote, actually, that my teacher wrote and left to me. So I use that as a workbook. But I also play a piece of music for each sign. And we have, my daughter works with crystals and essences, and she's made me these beautiful sprays that we sort of smell and we hear. And I used to have these collages. I mean, you do everything on the computers now, but when I first started, I used to bring these big boards in with these beautiful images on them and things like that. So, as well as the theory, I'm trying to teach in a way that um, that all people can understand, because I know I'm very visual myself. So if there's too much theory, sometimes I kind of go, okay, I just, it gets a little bit too much. So to have a kind of break from that, and even the elements, teaching the elements, and when you're smelling something and they're going, oh, it smells really spicy, and it smells, for fire, or it's warm, or it's, like, so you've got that kind of, you're engaging on a different level as well. So it's not for everyone though, but
No, and over the years, when we dropped calculation as part of the course, that was one of the most freeing things we could have ever done.
yeah,
Because people, they hear about it, they struggled with it, and maybe in another school that's some schools are so much about exams and about preparing for this. And most people I know do astrology because they love it. They do it
yes,
because they want to learn about themselves. They want to
absolutely,
understand why they're here, all the big questions. And just sitting there and having to learn how to do a calculation when we live in a world of computers that would do it for you in under a second seems like a terrible
absolutely,
waste of time. And it also upsets people who, anybody from somebody that's got dyslexia, who's or math phobic, or just
yeah,
doesn't want to have to learn stuff that they can literally press
yeah,
on their phone or their computer. So,
mm,
and what we do nowadays at the LSA is to once somebody's been through year one, if they join year two or year three, they have automatic access to year one. So what we have in
fantastic,
Saturdays is that students come in and they're brand new and they're sitting next to somebody who isn't often, and they're told, look, there are going to be people here who are from year two and year three, so don't feel intimidated if they ask questions you know nothing about. That's one of the first things we say. But the other thing is that they can sit with somebody who's and it's a two-way learning process with them both. Just by somebody sitting there from year two describing something teaches them how to describe it, and the year one gets the feeling, as apart from the teaching, they also have somebody next to them that's in a way a sort of mini mentor. So I love, I say to people, just come back to the beginners.
mm,
Because if you don't know the essence of Mars or Venus, you're not going to apply it to the cycles of the Dow Jones or the stock market and all of those sorts of things, whatever you want to do, or
yeah,
Bitcoin, for heaven's sakes, um, if you don't understand the planetary essence, you're not going to be able to apply it to all the things that you can learn later
yes,
in the and it's interesting, I run a school now in China and Japan, and a lot of the students there we want more formulas, we want something more complicated. And I'd say, look, if you
mm,
understand the basics, you can apply everything that we're teaching you in terms of
absolutely,
fictional, horror, all those things.
yeah,
But if you don't know the basics, if you're just looking for a formula or something new to learn, you're going to miss
mm,
out on how to apply what you know.
yes.
So, um,
And I think, Frank, it's the same as anything you're building. Like if you want to create something or build something, you've got to have a good foundation.
yeah.
And if you haven't got a good foundation, that it's only going to get part way up and it's going to crumble. So I think that the idea of learning that basic level one is so important. That sort of the foundation of astrology, and and I think I think most students are wanting very similar things, as you said. I think they're all really wanting to know about themselves and they're understanding themselves. I've had quite a few students have come and they brought their sister or I had a mother and son once, and I've had twins, and I've had like quite a few different family members, and it's quite funny when you're there because you realise how that they've looked at life through the lens of this chart, and they're quite different. And most of them say, I came here to learn about me, but I've learned so much about other people being here. I mentioned I always remember this student. I had this lovely young man in my class once, and he was Nepalese and just a beautiful young man. And I had another one who was a bit of a larrikin and a surfy kind of guy, a bit younger. And we were teaching, and I was talking to them, we're doing Venus this night. And I said to them, perhaps you could look at Venus in your charts, to the two young men that were there, as being like what you might be attracted to in a woman or in a partner. And this young man said to me, well, he's got Venus in Virgo. And he said, well, what I might be looking at? And I said, well, and we sort of ran through some of the Virgo things, loyalty and practicality and grounded and organized and things like that. And he's looked at me with nearly stars in his eyes, and he said, but isn't that what every man is wanting in a woman? And this young surfy guy's got it in Scorpio, Venus in Scorpio, and he goes, man, that's not what I'm after in a woman. So it was kind of like this moment in the class where it was quite a funny moment, but then we both all went, great example, like here's this Venus in Virgo and this Venus in Scorpio wanting totally different things. And this is what life's about. We have to understand that how we think and see the world as totally different, and I think that's why astrology is such a gift for us. And, like, even like I know with your the heart of your chart that you're going to do on the first day, that's why something like that is so important, to be able to, like you talk about in 7 steps, but that's so important to be able to kind of pinpoint those things for whether it's for yourself or for someone else.
Yeah.
It's
It's true. People get lost in the details sometimes. And when you're learning a subject like tarot, for me, 78 cards is daunting. But
yeah.
then you realize you can divide them up into suits and into numbers and all sorts of things. But for me, I've always run away from that. I'm thinking I haven't got enough space in my head for astrology, palmistry, and tarot. But with the horoscope, as you say, what I'm doing on the first day in January, the 11th, is
Yeah.
to get people to prioritize and then to focus on the key players in the chart. It doesn't mean the others don't work. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean the others aren't important. It's just that sometimes there's an emphasis. There's something that we end up, if we recognize the emphasis, sometimes we might want to do less of it, or we might
Mm.
want to recognize that that is the driving force. Yeah.
Yes.
Somebody with a strong Saturn in their chart, and in the day, I'll show you how to find out the planetary strength of that and all of that. But somebody with a strong Saturn is going to act very differently to life in terms of ambition, career, relationships,
Mm.
their legacy, their vocation, to somebody with a strong Jupiter, for instance.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so the signatures, I think, are so important, and it's never about minimizing stuff to just get to scratch the surface. It's about pinpointing the key players and then going deep with them and understanding
Yes.
that this is the driver in the seat. And I think that's what I love doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's very validating for them too. When you can sit and sort of point out certain things in the chart that are very obvious, and whether you just, I know when I first sat in my first level astrology, and I had to wait till week 12 because I'm strong Pisces, Sun, Moon, Pisces. So I had to wait for week 12 and very patiently waited. But when I got there, it was like, because I think everyone wants to be seen and heard in the world, and I just sat there and went, oh my gosh, this is me. And like, I'm supposed to be this emotional and cry during ads in the commercial ads and all the rest of it. So it was very validating to think there's not really actually anything wrong with you. This is how you put together. And but then I discovered this whole Aquarian side to me, which I hadn't lived into, but it showed this side of me as I didn't realize was there. And So it's I think it's very important for people to understand, like these drivers and these signatures in their charts so that they can really live a fuller life. And the other thing, I think people want to find meaning, especially as we get older. I'm a lot older than you, Frank. But once we get older, you want to think that at the end of your day that you've made a difference, or that your life's had some sort of meaning. And I think that's I'm getting back to the weekend just to touch on that as well for this day two with the follow your bliss. And I think, that vocation and life purpose is so important, especially when we're starting to get on a little bit, to think that we can make a difference in our lives, in people's lives in particular, and how we can do that.
Yeah.
It's so, like I'm such a fan of astrology, always have been, and just think it's a way of I can remember one student said to me once, I used to get them to write something at the end of level one saying, what they've learned about themselves through astrology. And I remember this one girl, she's actually just come back to our class after a 10-year gap. And she's come back to the group, and she said after 12 weeks, she said, I always felt I needed a roadmap and never had one. And she said, astrology is my roadmap. And I
Yeah.
thought that's a great, way of looking at it. So
It's beautiful. Yeah. And it's so important to be seen, to recognize that.
yeah,
And astrology is so often associated with judgment. And yet, we may judge the chart in terms of understanding the key themes, but we're never judging, hopefully, never judging the person. And I
yes,
always say to students, if you've got a pet peeve about a particular sign, like I'm never going to date a Cancer again, or I'm never going to marry a moon in Scorpio, all those sorts of things that we find out, you soon recognize that those things are in your chart,
mm,
and we're attracting. The chart is a mirror and a magnet. And so
yes,
my feeling with that is to uh, uh, really to encourage people to embrace who they are. I remember watching or reading some of the old astrology books where Aries was always the big problem with Aries was impatience and selfishness. And being an Aries, I object to that unanimously. Um, and the thing about that, to me, both of those key traits are important to have at some point in your life. To dare to put yourself first before you even dare to look after anybody else. To know how to stand up for number one is one of the key things with Aries. I think all signs are selfish. They just do it in different ways. Aries just doesn't hide it the way
yeah,
other signs do.
more obvious.
And the impatience, sometimes, you need that impatience sometimes to get things moving. I think of Aries as we're just about to go into the Olympics, of course, and we've got Wimbledon on at the moment here and everything. And that idea of being the starter, being the pace setter. And then you don't need to finish the race. You just get people going.
Get
Uh,
them going, get them
yeah.
started. Yeah.
And
Mm.
so I think every sign, every placement has a series, a spectrum of possibility to take advantage of. Of course, you can express things in a very negative way if you want to, um, but I'm a big fan of saying, there's no junk in the chart, there's no rubbish, there's no
Mm.
mistake with things. If you read you've got a Mercury retrograde and somebody tells you that's a bad thing, don't go back to that website. Give that
Exactly.
book away. Don't let somebody's narrow vision of who you are spoil what you're discovering about yourself. So the
Mm.
irony about astrology is that we so often read about ourselves, and the things that we read that are negative, that come back to that little voice in the head of not good enough that we've all
Yeah,
got. Um,
yeah,
and we grab onto that one thing in a book, and it becomes the reason, the excuse, the problem, and really everything can be transformed. I'm a big fan of reframing stuff. And also, I hate the idea of things being in detriment, in fall, elevated,
yes, yeah.
all of that
So that
nonsense.
negative connotation. Yeah,
It's so
yeah,
archaic. And I say it, and I'll probably say it at the weekend, that to me, the only debility is an astrologer's inability to say something useful,
yeah,
to be helpful
yeah.
with that placement. Because if you can't, all you have to say, oh, you've got Mars in Cancer, that's debilitated. That's a problem. Don't see clients if you can't say
Yeah.
something positive about
Yeah.
placements.
There'd be so many beautiful things about that. You
Yeah.
know, you're reframing the zodiac, which was one of the talks you did that I got a lot of my students to tune into. That was amazing talk, and really exactly what you're saying, and showing probably the why behind these signs, why they're like that. But we all need. I know that I've got a very dear friend who she's actually Taurus, but she's got 5 planets in Aries. And I don't think I'd be going anywhere if it wasn't for her. She will look at something that'll be good. And she goes, okay, I'll book it. Let's do it. Like I'm going, oh, my place, oh, hang on, I might get, and she goes, no, no, we're doing it. Like, so I always think, I'm sure I would have seen half the world or done half the things I have if it wasn't for her, because she's really good at getting going. Once we get there, I've got to take over and do everything once we travel. But that initial spark, she gets me going, which is great.
Yeah.
And so that's that great gift of Aries. And I remember one of my students that was Aries, and I used to always say, if I'm going into a fight, I'm taking Mel with me, because she was just, she was there with you. She was, it was great. I had a incident in class one day when someone got particularly upset. She just stood up and it was just like, don't, go near Narelle. And I said, it's okay. I can do, I can handle this. It's all right. But that Aries, they're so ferocious and courageous, and, they're the first to put up their hand.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. And yeah, so yeah, I know we're on the same page with this. I know Brian is as well. It's all about looking at the chart and giving people positive possibilities about who they are, what they need, without assuming too much. Because I always say to students, I learned astrology with a biography in one hand and a birth chart in the other. And you're reading
Mm.
about somebody, whether it's their words or somebody else's, and you learn so much from how they've navigated their chart all their lives. And then you meet somebody else with a similar chart and they've done something quite different.
Yeah.
Often because of their circumstances, they've got different parents, they've got, it could be their gender, that could be their sexuality, it could be a whole range of things that means the world treats them differently. But it's still that same essence of the birth chart, and it will come
Yes.
out in some way.
Some
Uh,
way. Yeah.
yeah, it'll
Mm.
come out. So yes, I'm looking forward to that. The first day is going to be on getting to the heart of the chart and
Yeah. I'm
synthesizing
so
things. I'm going to have some
excited.
fun. I'm going to invite the students to send their charts in so I can have a quick look at them beforehand and maybe make a few notes for them. But I'll get them involved in doing that. And I want them to come with charts of friends and family if they want to, and however they want to do it. Some people never want to show their chart either. That's one thing, isn't it? Of course, so they'll only for willing participants. And the second day we're doing the astrology of work, vocation, and purpose,
Yeah.
following your
So,
bliss. And I use three areas of that for to understand it. And again, simple astrology, but once you've got the simple bits mapped out, you can go deep. And one of
yes.
the techniques that I use is from a book by Faye Blake called Vocational Astrology. And it's using the sun, ascendant, and midheaven to work out your personal brand. So we're going to have some fun on the second day with people working out their mission statement, their brand. It could be for a website. I'm going to show everyone how to do that. It's going to be great fun to do that.
Sounds great. Yeah.
I know I've been secretly working out yours, Narelle, as well, but you're going to have to give me permission to mention
That's
your chart on
okay.
the day.
You've got my permission.
But I'm
But
thinking
I don't know.
I think I might do an example they all know first, and then they'll see it. But we'll see how you feel about that after today.
Sounds
But
like fun.
oh,
Yeah. I
so
was
we'll
going to say I'm accepting bribes at the moment because they're all wanting their charts done, of course. So I'm just I might make a little money on the side.
okay, good. That sounds good to me. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you again in January. Thank you
Yes,
so much for chatting with me today. I know it's late there as well, and
that's okay.
it's lovely. We shall crack open the wine, gin, vodka, whatever we need after this chat, and really appreciate that. And we'll see you very soon. And I'll put in the email address if that's okay in the video, so
Yes.
people get in touch with you. Do you have a website as well, or is it mainly just the email that's the
Would you
best?
believe I've managed to be an astrologer for over 20 years and not have a website?
Okay.
So everybody thinks it's imagine Kira, she's at me all the time saying, you've got to do this. And I said, I only want a certain amount of work. I don't want that much work. So I just take, and so I've had a word of mouth. I've been very fortunate, been very blessed with my classes and things like that, that I've just had word of mouth and been able to get enough, just enough, not too much work for me. Yeah, but I'm really looking forward to January. And I know because I share your work, as you know, with my students now, which started with the solar arc directions. I can remember the first time I looked at that book and thought, oh my God, like, why has someone written something so easy to understand as this before? So they all fell in love with you through that book, and now they're all huge followers of yours. So we're really looking forward to seeing you and having you in Australia,
Thank
and
you.
hopefully seeing a bit of Sydney and having a few nice meals and a couple of nice wines.
I look forward to that very much. Yes. Just not the night before, then I'll be fine. Yeah,
Not the night before, no, I'm never the night before.
oh,
Thank you so much, Frank. We're
thank you,
really,
Al.
really excited about you coming. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Lots of love.